Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. Matt Norlander is here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you're not yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Also, go ahead and do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Big news on this Monday. Dan Hurley has made his decision after a weekend trip to Southern California. The two-time and reigning national champion has decided to pass on the opportunity to coach the Los Angeles Lakers, and he will instead stay at UConn, where he'll try to become the first men's Division I coach since John Wooden to three-peat in this upcoming season. The Lakers reportedly offered 6 years, $70 million. That's $11.7 million per year. Dan Hurley said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going back to stores. Norlander, let's start with your thoughts on Dan Hurley's decision to turn down the Lakers and remain in college basketball.
Yeah, biggie here. Big day for Connecticut, the school, Connecticut, the state. I opened the last show. I got my windows closed, got the AC going. Listen to the streets of Connecticut. Well, I don't hear anything right now, but I know they're going crazy. And by the way, the way we got to this finally getting announced, it was a wild morning. Just in terms of the UConn scheduled practice for 2 p.m., Hurley not showing up to campus until around 1 p.m. when normally he obviously gets in, relatively early in the morning, kind of stretching this out. And so as the morning went along and talking to people and texting with people, this led some people to believe he was more likely to stay. And it led others to say, no, he's stretching this out. And because of this, he's going to go in there last minute, explain why he had to take the job. I thought as of this morning, he was going to stay. And then I texted with our buddies Jeff Borzello and John Fanta shortly before it went out. I was like, "All right, last call. What's your call?" I said, "I'm flipping. I think he's staying." And the reason why is because Andrea showed up at campus.
Yeah.
When she was there, and I wasn't super confident, but I thought, she really going to show up and he's going to say, "Hey, it's been real. Practice is off." I don't know. It's a major win for college basketball, obviously, and I think that should be emphasized. We got a lot to get to on this show, but the idea that we would have lost yet another prominent face of the sport coach, the brain drain continuing. I actually think, would the sport have survived? Of course it would, but it's not good in a compound measure to have lost Krzyzewski. These are all Hall of Fame championship winning coaches, obviously. Boeheim, Roy Williams, Jay Wright, and to have lost someone to the NBA. It would have been a sting. It would have been, I think, a potential disaster for UConn's program, because UConn would have been put in the position of, okay, do we elevate Kamani Young or Luke Murray? But my indication was Kamani Young was probably going to be the guy. If there was an in-house promotion, do we elevate him to try and save the roster, but he's never run a program, or do we try and bring someone else in, potentially a Bruce Pearl, who the AD at Connecticut is Dave Benedict. He was on staff at Auburn when Pearl was hired there, so he was considered the outside the UConn favorite. But what would the roster have looked like, and how could they have been able to pick up the pieces and assemble after Hurley left? You don't have to worry about that at all. That's all out the window. I do think, though, the alternate universe would have been really intriguing for UConn. Now you retain the roster. You've got some real motivation to go after the three-peat, which is very tough, and we can get to that even more on the later in the show here. But yeah, it's been interesting to see college basketball in the month of June have a story that means so much to the sports discourse, and for Dan Hurley to be, in essence, one of the most powerful figures in sports by virtue of a decision. And I'm eager to eventually hear from him. I assume maybe he'll have media availability after the practice today. We'll see, and then talk to him about what led to this. I mean, we got plenty to get to, by the way. He came back and went to a Billy Joel concert on Saturday. I got thoughts on all this stuff, but that's my initial quickie monologue. I am not surprised he opted to stay. And I know we've kind of talked about this before in the past, GP, but I'm going to bring up what I brought on by HQ when the lead question that Tommy Tran asked me was, why do you think this happened? What I will say is this got insisted to me by a few different people over the past few days, with those people believing that he would not take the Lakers job, saying Danny is so loyal. And when you look at the situation with that roster, you look at the idea that his family, his parents, they don't want to leave Jersey, and they don't have to, but that he would be a coast apart, and that family is so tight that his loyalty will probably win out because the money truly doesn't mean something to him. I do happen to believe that. And I think that was the single biggest factor as he ultimately came back to how loyal he is and how much being an East Coast guy means something to him and his family and those closest to him.
This is one of those deals where last week when we first talked about this, I could sort of understand either decision. Like if he goes, of course that makes sense. If he stays, I understand why. And I still in this moment would have understood either decision. He was fortunate enough to be placed in a situation where I don't want to say there's not a wrong choice, but either choice is amazing. As the days ticked off and I talked to other people about it and just sort of thought through it from my own perspective, I do think I landed at some point this weekend where doing what he's doing, which is staying, makes more sense to me. Last week when we talked about this, one of the rationalizations I made for, if you leave, you can always come back to college basketball, right? Which is true. He could always come back to college basketball. The reverse of that is also true. He can always go to the NBA. Like I was just on CBS Sports HQ talking to Tommy and I said, listen, this is a great day for UConn today, but like, Tommy, if you and I are still sitting here a year from now, we might be doing this again a year from now. Talking about this. Right. This ain't stopping.
That's true.
Right?
Yes.
All right. So I don't want to speak for Dan. He'll speak for himself at some point. But I think when you start thinking through these things, first off, his whole life is on the East Coast. It just is. And Southern California is amazing, but it's far away, and it wouldn't just be taking Dan and Andrea to another part of the country. It would be taking them, as you pointed out, away from their families. Like when I talked to Andrea at the Final Four, I interviewed her on CBS Sports Network during that practice show on that Friday. And, it's always you're standing with her for 10 minutes before they actually, bring the camera over and you're live on television. So we're just talking and she's like, yeah, my so-and-so's on the way and so-and-so's already here. And we're trying to get so-and-so picked up at the air. It's like, there's a lot of family. And that's really important to them. And as I started thinking through it, it was like, okay, it's not just like he was walking away from UConn. He was walking away from a chance to win a third straight national title. Almost nobody will ever have a chance to win a third straight national championship in any sport, except for the Oklahoma softball coach, I guess.
There we go.
but like, it's a very rare thing. He would have been walking away from that and blowing up his entire family dynamic. And if he would have done it, let me be clear again, I would have understood because it's the Lakers, LeBron James, all that stuff. But does it make more sense to me if I'm like totally breaking it down to pass on this, get as much for you and your assistants as you can get from UConn, run it back with a top 5 team, see if you can win a third straight title, whether you do or not, whatever. And if your goal really is to someday coach in the NBA, there's probably a better time to do that than now, and probably a better place to do that than on the other side of the country. And when I sort of thought it through from that perspective, turning this down made I think more sense to me than accepting it, particularly when I heard the numbers. 6 years, $70 million. Like, listen, that's more money than you'll ever be offered. It's more money than I'll ever be offered. It would have made him the second highest paid professional basketball coach in Los Angeles behind Ty Lue.
That's one way of framing it. Yes.
I just think that when you are when you're asking somebody to look, like Dan Hurley doesn't want to leave. That was clear. So when you are asking somebody to leave something they don't want to leave and relocate their family to a place they don't want to live, you've got to blow them away. And it's possible, even if it would have been $100 million, Dan Hurley would have just said, no, I'm not doing this. But I was surprised it came in, this is crazy, at only like 11.6 million per year, because in only 6 years, because that is not, that doesn't sound like to me, if you are the biggest thing in basketball, that's what they say they are, and you found your guy and you think he's the next Pat Riley, this is all the reporting we heard.
Yeah.
I don't understand how you make him a lower paid coach than Ty Lue. That can't be your big offer.
Well, okay. So to this particular point, let's just drift quickly into Lakerland and into the NBA stuff, because I did want to be sure over the past few days to check in with a few what I would consider, good, reliable sources I have at the NBA level, just to get a temperature gauge on the Laker search with Hurley. I think we mentioned this on the show. I can't remember because it's come up so many times in kind of off-show conversations. This has been a weird story. Like Hurley emerging as a candidate and everything that played out, how public it was. This has just been a weird story, okay? But on the Lakers end of it, this got reinforced to me by 4 NBA connected base sources in that the Lakers' job, and I sent a tweet out on this, a couple tweets out on this earlier on Monday before we knew Dan's decision, because I wanted to put the context out there before we knew his decision. This is not considered a good job. In fact, one source equated it to me, coincidentally enough, to the St. John's job, in that St. John's is a fine job. And yeah, UConn fans, I'm invoking St. John. This is the source's words, not mine, but UConn fans that are on cloud nine listening to this, what I'm about to say, they're about to elevate to another plane, where it's like, yeah, once upon a time, St. John's was good, but it's not like, if you look under the hood, if you look at what it is around the league, and it's not going to rate as a great job by any means whatsoever. The Lakers job, here's the direct quote from one source with real NBA ties. That Lakers job isn't good. It's not good. Anyone that's not in the NBA might not realize it, but the perception of the job is better than what the job is. It's not a good job. It's hard. The ownership group isn't flush with cash, and their front office hasn't proven they can build a roster. Moving forward, you can't even build up with 3 superstars because of the new CBA. You take LeBron and AD off that team, look at that roster, the team is horrible. I then push back on the source a little bit. I said, well, yeah, you take the 2 best players off of any team. He's like, no. Look at, if you take the 2 best players off of every roster in the NBA, and then you look what the Lakers roster is without its 2 best players versus every other team, you can see the source expressed skepticism over the Lakers' viability, because also the way they just run things. And listen, I got nothing against the Lakers. This is multiple different sources around the league, basically framing the Lakers as a mom and pop organization. And the challenge for Hurley would have been, once you get there, dealing with LeBron and all the good, but the not so good that could come with that. And then after that, when you really look at how they run their organization and you compare it, I mean, I had one source kind of say to me, not kind of directly said, like, yeah, in some ways, like he almost said it sympathetic, like in some ways, like other people kind of laugh at the way the Lakers like do their business over there, which if you're not in the NBA, you might not realize. So I only bring this up to say it's giving more context to some of the factors that went behind Hurley's decision to not choose to take the Lakers job and go to the NBA. Still a glamorous job. You still would have been able to live in LA and be paid $70 million. But the number is lower than the initial speculation that was $100 million. And with that, it becomes all the more understandable. Although I need to harp on this point too, because I do believe, and I think I might have mentioned this on the last show as well, but apologies if I'm repeating myself, because I've had this conversation with Hurley multiple times, and I do believe him when he says this. Like some people, like they might say it and you might be like, I don't know. I'm telling you that when it comes to Hurley and the difference between, just being making $2 million theoretically and making $10 million. Yes, it has an impact on your life, but he is so not motivated. Like he has enough money. He's not motivated by those things. He's motivated by certain challenges. I think he's motivated by the dangling carrot that is, can we actually go do this? Can we go and win a 3rd straight NCAA championship, which is going to be absurdly difficult. Oh, by the way, it's a real conversation and I am entertaining it as a possibility, but it will be fascinating to see that coaching staff and that team try and achieve that goal, no matter what seed it enters the tournament with, a 1 seed, a 2, a 3, a 4, whatever it is. That will be interesting. But the money aspect of it and it not being as much Parrish, I couldn't help but notice as well. And I think it was, while it was a healthy offer, to your point, 2nd highest paid coach in LA. I think Woj had, and this was his report on the money, by the way, 6th highest coach in the league, which is still good.
Of course.
But the way another source framed it to me was like, if he takes the job, he'll get his money, he'll get paid. But everyone else that's not the star players and the head coach and the Lakers, like the stuff they do and the stuff behind this, like it's a tougher gig, just the way they do it versus a lot of other teams. So with that in mind, I think it makes a ton of sense for him to chase college glory. And then if you're able to, Parrish, let's say he never wins another national championship again, which would be more than adequate. Let's just say he keeps Connecticut as a mostly year-over-year top 25 program, which would be our expectation moving forward, right? Even in an altered landscape where Big East teams aren't going to make as much as SEC because of TV money and all that stuff. Even with that, it's still hard for me to see a situation, provided that Hurley continues to win and mostly stays himself, where he's not going to be provided an opportunity in the NBA a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. I had one source speculate to me, he's like, if I'm Dan Hurley, I'm taking this job offer from the Lakers and I'm turning around and I'm going to Dan Gilbert, who's worth more than 10 times what the Buss family is worth, and trying to get a job with the Cavs instead. And so it was interesting to get that perspective from a number of people who essentially said, if this wasn't the Lakers and you kind of look at the details and it wasn't based in LA, like Hurley wouldn't have a decision at all. But because of all the glamour of all that stuff, it's why it took so long. And here we are.
I hear you. on the Lakers stuff. It sounded like you were describing the Oakland A's as opposed to the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, they did win a championship less than 4 years ago.
I agree with you. Again, this is just 4 different people in 4 different spots in the NBA laying this out to me. So I'm just passing along the intel that has been shared with me. It's like, hey, before you think he's going, you need to realize how people in the league that consider whether or not they're going to go work for the Lakers, the things they consider, and why the job from the outside looking in isn't as prestigious as some might think. That's all.
I get that. I guess I would just counter with it's the Los Angeles Lakers, and for $70 million. Okay, like I don't know that there's a more high profile, and that can be difficult. Like that, like LeBron James coaches often you either win championships or you get fired. There's not a whole lot of in between.
He turned down a job that also brought way more pressure. Let's be honest.
Yeah. You better win championships, or because if you don't, you're getting fired. So that's tough. I think more than like, I'm not comfortable with the Lakers organization. Like that might have played a role, maybe. I think more than that, and this is where the money thing comes in. Like if you just say, because here's what the Lakers will say: we offered somebody who's never worked in the NBA an opportunity to be the 6th highest paid coach in the NBA. What are you talking about? We lowballed him. The problem with that is you're not just trying to hire a basketball coach in a vacuum. You are quite literally asking somebody to do something. You ready for this? They don't want to do. You're asking somebody to leave something they don't want to leave. All right. He doesn't want to leave for UConn. It's not like he, posted his resume somewhere. He doesn't want to leave UConn. He might someday, but he didn't want to right now. So you got to make him do it, right? You got to make him. And I know this sounds crazy, but 6 years, $70 million. Like I would have been, I know this is nuts. I would have been offended by that offer if I were Hurley. I would have been like, nope, you're not serious about this. You're not serious about this.
Yeah.
Somebody else said it was going to be $100 million. Imagine reading it's going to be $100 million. And when you sit down with them, they tell you it's 70.
I had one sitting head coach of some renowned predict to me on Monday morning his exact words. I'm not going to tell you the coaches, but he said, I said, what's your guess on Hurley's decision? He said, the smart one, LA, no brainer. Act like it's a tough decision out of respect to UConn. Get your ducks in a row. He's been done for 72 hours. It's $100 million. And then I circled back and he was like, hold on. It wasn't $100 million. And I was like, no, that's fair. And people in the chat are even pointing out, and listen, I understand we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. However, $70 million in the state of California with those, it does matter. It does. That's awesome.
You would have
been insulted. Don't come to get Paris for the $70 million. It'll spit in your face for $70 million. What are you talking about?
I dare Gatula to come with me with $70 million. I'll walk right out. No, if I would accept $70 million right now. If I were Dan and I had just read it's $100 million, when they say, so we're thinking $70 million, I'd have said, what? I just lost $30 million sitting here. I flew all the way to California to lose $30 million. So, and the other thing about, and this is where and I'm not saying, because we all did this. We all sat around all weekend talking about, what would you do? What do you think he's going to do? What would you do? So it's a fun exercise. The problem with projecting what you would do onto what he should do is like, here's the truth. I would 100% rather live in Los Angeles than stores or Los Angeles.
Well, to be clear, he's not sleeping in stores. I'm assuming he might be in Avon or there's some nice bordering towns. Let's be clear.
I don't mean anything about, how about this?
Okay.
I personally would rather live in Los Angeles than Connecticut. All right. I personally would rather live
I actually wouldn't. And I live in Connecticut. But
okay. But here's my point. I'd rather live in Los Angeles than Jersey City. We happen to be talking about somebody who would rather live in Jersey City than Los Angeles. Yes. We happen to be talking about somebody who would rather live in Connecticut, I think, than Los Angeles.
That's right.
I know his wife would.
Yes.
So that's why I don't think, because you're going to hear a lot of this today, like this is a big win for college basketball, and it is because we're holding on to one of the brightest minds and biggest coaches and personalities in the sport. This is great for us. But it doesn't mean that he's actually picking college basketball over the NBA. It just means he's picking the current UConn. Well, listen,
he did. All right, continue.
Well, he picked, what he picked? The UConn situation as currently constructed and the opportunity to win a 3rd straight title over coaching the Los Angeles Lakers.
I'm about to use your line on you, friend. That's a distinction without a difference. He picked college basketball and its life over the NBA.
I don't agree with that. I actually don't agree with that. I mean, I'm happy to let other people say it. I think he picked UConn and this situation over the Lakers in that situation. If you think he picked college basketball over the NBA, what you're telling me is that you just think he's going to pick college basketball over the NBA. And I'm not concerned. I'm not convinced he won't be an NBA coach someday.
Yeah, I agree with that. But he can pick it today. That doesn't mean it won't be the situation tomorrow. But in essence, he chose to continue to be a college basketball coach and not an NBA coach. So that's we might be into semantics there.
Yeah,
but that's how you look at it.
We're very in semantics. But what I would say is there will be another year. Maybe this will make more sense. There'll be another year where he will not be asked to walk away from the opportunity to win a third straight national title. There'll be another year where he's not asked to walk away from a preseason top 5 team. And that is much easier to walk away from than this. I don't think he could walk. I guess I'd put it this way. It's not insane to me to think that he will one day or could one day walk away from UConn. I just think this is the hardest time to do it.
Yes.
He couldn't do it now.
And the timing isn't great. And I'll even side with you on this as I talked with a few people on it. If it was the Knicks job, I think he's gone. With it. I think he's I think he's the coach. If this was the Knicks, and it's not, the Knicks happen to be relevant and good for the first time in forever, I think he's gone. And I think he picks the NBA over college basketball in that kind of situation. That is mighty intriguing. For you, actually, I got a couple thoughts, but I feel like we might need to break.
Make us some money.
Can we
get that $70 million contract?
Partner us at $70 million.
There's some new players in town, and they brought the plague.
You got my attention. You don't want that. Welcome to Kingstown.
Mayor of Kingstown. New season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
What's up, Jeremy Renner?
Okay. What's up, Jeremy Renner?
You ever heard about that snowplow situation?
I did hear about the snowplow situation. Yeah, but he's on it. He's on the way back. It's a comeback story we love to see.
Yeah.
All right. Just now that the story is done, the decision is in. I thought it interesting as it was playing out that he was like the things that made me think, okay, maybe he will wind up staying, where he goes out, he does only a day in LA. Like this dude did not want to stick around, see the Walk of Fame, go over to Laurel Canyon. Zero interest. It was there, quickie interview, back on the PJ to check out Billy Joel with his wife, Andrea, and assistant Luke Murray. And I thought the quickness of that I thought was interesting, because if you can squeeze out a long weekend in California, you recently just did squeeze out a long weekend in California.
I paid for myself to go. Dan couldn't get out of there fast enough.
You were in Cali longer than Hurley was.
I spent more time in California
that is fact.
This month than Dan Hurley.
So did I, by the way. As coincidence would have it, we both actually spent more time in California than Hurley did. So I couldn't help but notice that. And then we didn't text on this at all. In fact, I'm glad that we didn't, because I wanted to save it for the show. However, he decided. I saw it late Saturday night before I tuned in, turned in and went to bed. Watched the Netflix documentary on We Are the World. I'm a couple months behind, but finally watched that. Pretty good. I enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really cool. Awesome flashback in time. If you've not seen it yet, it's The Greatest Night in Pop, I believe. But I was watching that, and then I was like, let me just check in on the Hurley stuff, because I didn't think we were getting something on Saturday. And lo and behold, Luke Murray posted a video, like, a 6-second Instagram story of him, Dan, and Andrea at the Billy Joel concert. And Luke is super smart. Like, Luke is a future head coach. And I was surprised to see it, because in that moment, like, unless you're in Hurley's circle, you didn't know where he was. And so when Luke posted it, I thought, they went out to LA. They're already back. They're in the Knicks building, and they're not just seeing any concert. They're seeing one of, like, there are at least 3 or 4 all-time music icons associated with Jersey and Greater New York. And Billy Joel's a Long Island guy, but it's Springsteen, Bon Jovi, Sinatra, Billy Joel. Hurley's got on the New York sign. Do we have the set list, by the way, Nana? Can we toss up the set list? I'm not even kidding you when I say I need to ask Dan Hurley if he knows who the hell Trey Anastasio was, because Trey Anastasio, the lead guitarist for Phish, out of nowhere sits in on this set, by the way. I did text him, ask for a response. I haven't gotten that back yet. I'm just wondering, at what point in this set list did we think, if he was undecided, New York State of Mind? New York State of Mind came in like GP. It was like the 10th song on the set list, but then you You get to the 13th song, it's moving out. Maybe he's waffling a little bit back and forth, back and forth.
What if Luke would have posted the video during moving
out?
out?
I know. Exactly. But I was surprised Luke posted it. And then that leads to everyone being like, what the hell's going on? He's back on the East Coast already. He's at the Garden. He's wearing a New York shirt. In that moment, I'll be honest, not knowing what he was going to do, I thought, if this got posted, like there's no way, I would not think that Luke would have posted it without him going, hey, it's all right if I toss this up on my IG story and stuff like that. To have done that, and if he went to the Lakers, that would have been a tough scene. That's all. Wouldn't you agree? A couple people were like, man, if they leave after doing that and like kind of teasing that they were out there because they were having a great time. I was like,
yeah, I never want to make too much try to read. Like it's like when like when Drake posts something cryptic on Instagram. I don't even know who he's talking to and what he's talking about.
Don't act like you're not diving in and trying to read into the tweets or IGs.
No, I know, but it feels like I'm a detective always. Like you can read into stuff sometimes when it's not even there. So I'm hesitant to do that always, but now I'm about to do it. When I saw that video, it made me think, oh, they're probably staying. Just because it's so. Again, I'm projecting here, but
we are reckless. Hold on, we're recklessly projecting, but the decision's in, so it's
It just I think it's harder to leave than it is to stay. All right.
Yeah.
And I think if you were seriously contemplating leaving or on the verge of leaving, I'd be buttoned up at home, like stressed out like crazy, as opposed to just kicking it at a concert, having a good time.
Yeah, man.
Deuces to the camera. It just felt like they seemed pretty relaxed in that moment. Like, hey, we went, we saw it, we know what we're going to do. This is not, because even if you, at that moment, you're leaving. Let's say the opposite's for you, leaving. You're not that happy about it.
Yeah.
You're just not happy about having to do what it is you're about to do. Like, I don't even want to inject myself into it, but I'll just say, when I saw that video, I was like, ooh, those look like people who have been given an incredible opportunity and they've just decided we're not going to mess with it. We're going to stay right here and do what we're doing. And we're back in the East Coast already. That's what it looked like to me.
I'd agree. Although with that in mind, though, I was bracing for an update on Sunday, because why not? If you had already made the decision, and maybe he had a 6-hour spell on Sunday where he was like, no, I got to take this job. And, he's pacing around his house and his yard, barefoot, shirt off, like a madman. Like I can totally picture Dan doing that and kind of going through it. But the journey to get to this point, it's been a fascinating story for college basketball fans to track. I think it's been fascinating from a media perspective. Now, are we back to, is JJ Redick actually a candidate? I think one big unknown with this is like, did JJ Redick privately turn down the Lakers or not? That led to Hurley. I know Woj's reporting has been that Hurley's been at the top of the Lakers list for a number of weeks, but there was enough noise from not just one singular reported, but there was enough noise on JJ Redick out there. Like, was it all a smokescreen, or did JJ seriously consider it and then said, no, we're good? I'll be interested to see where they actually land when it comes to all that stuff. And for Hurley to bring this up all the way until the 145 mark, which is what it was indicated to me that we should have an answer by 145 earlier in the day. And about 2 minutes before Woj posted the tweet, I was like, I swear to God, I put that out. I put myself out there, and thankfully it came through on it. Yeah, man, what a ride. June. I'm all good with any June coaching changes moving forward, by the way. Like, this can be a March, April thing. I mean, good Lord, man. Jeez.
Yeah, like these things don't happen often, but they
don't. But we've had them.
Brad Stevens was July, wasn't it?
Brad Stevens was the Friday of July 4th weekend.
Right.
Out of nowhere. Like, I'll never forget it, because we were living in Stanford at the time, and we were looking for a new place to move into. And so I was on like a tour of like a condo with my wife, and it's like 4:40. Borzella was with us at the time, and he tweets me, I guess I'll get the Brad Stevens news. I'm like, what do you mean the Brad Stevens news? He's like, he's going to the Celtics. And I'm like, what? So I remember having to leave, like telling the reels are showing around. I was like, we have to go. I was like, we have to go. The Butler coach is taking the Celtics job, and we had just like started. It was awkward. That was in July. Thad Matta out at Ohio State was a June changeover when that went down. What about Beeline? When was that? When was Beeline?
It was a little later.
Was it a little later?
But I don't think crazy late, but a little later
Yeah.
than the normal hiring
We
cycle.
get these semi-regularly.
The one that I remember, Billy Donovan, when he took the Magic job,
Yes.
but then came back. So that one, like that was when my oldest son now was a little guy, and I remember one day we were watching the Disney Channel because we'd watch. He was really into, and one day he goes, I'll never forget this. He goes, Dad, can we go to Disney World someday? And I said, yeah, of course we can go to Disney World. And the next question was, will you go with us? And I said, of course I'll go with you. What are you talking about? Why wouldn't I go? And he said, well, you might have to work, basketball. You might have to go to a basketball game instead. And I just felt sick. Like my child doesn't think I'll have time to take him to Disney World because I'm working so much. And it just makes you feel like you're not doing what you ought to be doing. I walked upstairs and I tried to find, like, where is the quietest week on the calendar after the NBA draft, nothing going on.
Yeah.
Identified it. We were going to go to Disney World for 3 days. I said, let's go for 8. Let's just make a whole thing out of it. Like, this is going to be the best Disney World vacation ever. I'm about to prove I'm a real dad. This is before Wi-Fi on planes and all that stuff.
New podcast listeners, this is a story he's told before, but you can
We took off in Memphis, landed in Orlando, and I had 1,000 text messages. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And we were supposed to go straight to the Magic Kingdom. We went straight to a McDonald's. My son played on the playground at McDonald's while I sat there and used McDonald's Wi-Fi to file a Billy Donovan story. And then you remember, it was like and then it was like 2 days later, it was like, he might not take the job.
Yeah.
He might turn around. And finally, my whole vacation is consumed with Billy Donovan. Finally, to his credit, Mark Swanson, my former boss, the man who hired me, one of the men who hired me, he actually called me and he said, I'm not printing anything else you do. Don't send me anything else. Billy Donovan can die. Don't write about it. Go be with your family. I appreciated that. And then as the vacation's over and we're coming back through security, through the Orlando airport,
who do you see? Who
do you see? Security, phone rings. Billy Donovan.
Yeah.
I was like, buddy, you have any idea what you did to my vacation? But these things happen every once in a while, and I guess
they do.
Hey, what else would we be doing today on June 10th?
I would. Well, you would have seen me with shorter hair. I had to push back the old haircut, but I got it rescheduled for later on today. I was banking on everything being done by 3:30, so that's done. So next time we pod, I'll get a lot of this mopped.
I planned for this. I woke up this morning. First thing I did, I shaved because I said I'm probably gonna have to be on camera.
That is correct. That is correct. By the way, poll for this episode on YouTube. The question was, did Dan Hurley make the right decision? Yes or no? If you're listening to the pod, what do you think the response? I'm gonna give you the answer in just a second. If you're listening, what do you think the audience said? Did Dan Hurley make the right decision? What do you think the split was?
I would say 70-30 yes.
It is 89-11 yes.
You got to remember, we're talking to college basketball.
We are talking to college basketball fans, so I'm definitely factoring that in. But that's still a pretty heavy.
It's a fine poll question. It's just one of those that I don't think I don't even think there's a right answer to it. It's like, did Dan Hurley make the right decision? That's totally up to Dan Hurley. It's not for me to say, or any of us.
I mean, it is. I mean, people do want to have us come on here and give our opinions on stuff and reactions. So, I mean, you know what I'm to say? He did make the right decision because I think ultimately he can and will find himself in a position to coach a job that he's more comfortable at. Yeah. To his own words, Hurley earlier this season when he was doing kind of post UConn championship stuff said, I'm interested in the NBA if I can just grow up a little bit more. And I think there is also something to that. I think his temperament, the stress of an 82 game, this idea that you go to the NBA and it's an easier life, I think that's a misnomer. You're coaching at least twice as many games. The season is so much longer. You have to tiptoe sometimes around the egos of star players, and they run the show. And it's not like you don't have pressure from an owner, from billionaires who are your bosses there, and your jobs are not long for the world normally. So the idea that he would have gone to LA and it's a better life once you establish yourself. But I'm not convinced it would have been a better life for him in the first 2 or 3 years of having that job. So I think he actually did make the right decision, because if and when he does choose to make a different decision and one day maybe work for James Dolan, we'll see on that, by the way. I think he has set himself up better. And now in just doing this, he was already a made man forever inside this state, but like the idea that he turned down, this is a first. No one, it's gotta be a first, right? No one's turned down Kentucky, a top 3 program all time, And the Lakers, the top 2 franchise in the history of the NBA. No one's turned out twice, two turndowns in 2 months.
I mean, Scott Drew did Louisville and Kentucky. That's pretty good.
He's close. Hurley one-upped him.
We need the Lakers to come after Scott.
Yeah.
We need the
Scott's
Lakers
running the Lakers. Now there's a vision.
We need the Lakers to identify Scott Drew as a serious head coaching candidate. I guess, and again, we're back in semantics. If the question was asked to me, did Dan Hurley make the right decision? I would say Dan Hurley did what I think I would have done if I were Dan Hurley. I think if I were Dan Hurley, I would have done the same thing Dan Hurley did. So if that's the way you define right, then I guess so. But if he'd have made, I wouldn't. There was nothing he could have done where I would come on here and say, I can't believe this guy. I can't believe what he just did.
Well, that's what we need to hunt. We need to find that situation for you to come on this podcast and talk about Hurley. Like, I can't believe this guy. I can't believe this.
I stopped judging other people's career choices at some point. When I was 27, I knew what everybody should do with their careers and lives. At 47,
I want that.
I
want that GP back. I want that GP back. I need some of that back. I do. I need some of that back. Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back in 24. Come on.
Hey, you know what? Let me work on it.
Is that a show, by the way?
I think so. It feels like it.
It feels like a show. UConn has Dan Hurley. He's back in the mix. Oh, by the way, returns what can fairly be described as the best coaching staff in the sport. Hurley's obviously a part of that, but keeping
it is always funny. I had this thought this weekend. Like, if you're Kamani, what are you thinking?
I know. Well, tell me about it. Like
wild
situation.
You never want to be conflicted, but if you're being honest with yourself,
how could you not be?
How could you not be?
Because he would have been the favorite. And not saying he definitely would have got the job.
Right.
Kamani Young, associate head coach, would have been the favorite to get the job, and he can run. Well, he also has choices. Like, he's well compensated. He will have a head coaching job if he wants it. He could have one right now. So you get to continue living that life and being part of a huge program. But this is my speculation is, had Hurley gone, I think it would have been Kamani versus, would they have tried to get Bruce Pearl to come to Connecticut, and would he or no? I'm not saying Kamani would have been second to him. We don't have to deal with that. But yes, for the past 3 or 4 days, Kamani must have been, going through a ton. Understandably so, man. Really good coach, really good assistant, and he's owed his moment soon here.
Going through something like this, you should have a pretty good idea of, like, would I have been the guy? Like, and if he thinks he would have been, like, if he can ever find out definitively, if Dan would have left, what would have happened? We would have just promoted you. Then you know what you do? You just stay there until he leaves. Because eventually, I shouldn't say that, but, like, I can envision Dan Hurley coaching in the NBA someday. And if I'm Kamani, unless I'm presented with just an amazing, and my point is this, he's an assistant coach for now and could be a head coach, I think, whenever, but he's the type of guy who should be really selective about what job he takes, because the best job he can get might be the one that is just one seat over from where he is right now.
That's right. That is a show, but we're going to wrap up. Actually, I wanted to ask you this. Billy Joel or Elton John?
Elton John.
I would agree. I'm more Elton than Billy. But that being said, do you have a favorite Billy Joel song? Have I asked you this on the show before? I feel like maybe.
I mean, it's a bit of a cliche.
Oh boy.
Not Piano Man, although Piano Man's is it a brilliant song?
Is it a brilliant song? I don't know if it's brilliant. It's a very well constructed song, but you got to, and I'm fine with Piano Man. I'm particular about my harmonicas on songs.
Yeah.
And the harmonica is a defining sound of that song, but it's not the kind of harmonica that I like to hear over a song. That's all.
I don't really, I'm just not a fan of rhyming Navy and Davy. It seems cheap.
That's
seems amateur hour for me.
So what's your go-to Billy Joel song / album if you have one?
Only the Good Die Young.
Only the Good Die Young.
I just
feel like we've had this conversation on the show before. By the way,
I don't know. I just like that song. I just like it's catchy and it's you bought, and I kind of like, I don't know. That's the first one that popped in my head. I wouldn't call myself I've never seen Billy Joel.
Neither have I.
I have a bunch of times said Billy Joel's at the Garden, I'm going this time, and I just never did it.
Have you?
I just never. I mean, I've been there because, like, I don't mean like I'm gonna. I mean, I've been a 5-minute walk away, and I could just go tonight, and I just have never done it.
I am definitely Elton over Billy. Elton actually recently hung up as well. And I guess is Billy Joel's show at the Garden next month? You wouldn't know this. I'm asking out loud.
No, it's either the last
one.
It's one of them. It's either the last one, or he's already done the last one, or like we are in the final
countdown. One
countdown.
coming. Yeah,
we're in the final countdown for sure.
Final countdown. There we go.
Final countdown.
Final countdown. I would say
that's my favorite Billy Joel song. Final Countdown by Europe. Imagine naming a whole band after a continent. I don't think
you tell that to Asia. Yeah. Okay. I got you.
What if there was a band called North America?
There's a band called America, and I'll take America over Asia and Europe. I'll tell you that much.
My favorite band name.
It's a great song after Africa.
My favorite band name is The Band.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you know why they're the band.
I do know the story. I can't give it.
They were
I know
Bob Dylan's backup band, so they were just kind of informally referred to as the band, and they took on the moniker, and they're a great band. Not from America, though, from Canada. Most people don't realize that. My favorite Billy Joel song, not that you asked, whatever. I think I'd go Scenes from an Italian Restaurant is definitely his best constructed song. Brender and Eddie, by the way, not Brenda, but Brender. I think I would go New York State of Mind. I think that's a pretty damn good song. And I'd love to see Billy Joel. Probably never will, but it's solid. Go back to Visit the Stranger. Pretty damn good album. So
one night, and then we'll get out of here. I don't think he would mind me telling this story, but we're sitting in studio, phone rings, and Wally Zerbiak gets up, like clearly steps out of the studio, takes the phone call, comes back in, and I'm like, is everything okay? Because when somebody takes steps, I was like, is everything okay? Kids okay? Everything good? He's like, yeah, I'm just renting my house out on Long Island. And I was like, oh wow, you got a renter? Who? He's like, Billy Joel. Apparently, Billy Joel was having work done to his place and needed a place, and so he just rented Wally's place for I don't know however many months.
Nice,
right?
How about that?
Yeah. So those Long Island guys stick together,
That's true. That's true. Hey, thanks to everyone for checking in here on a Monday. Unexpected story pop, no doubt about it, for college hoops. And we are closing in on 2 weeks until the NBA draft. So we will have more draft content as we get closer to the draft night and stuff like that. So we'll have you there as always. But knock on wood, man, again, this coaching carousel has been an all-timer. But knock on wood, I think we're done for the year 2024.
Until the Lakers come after Scott Drew. We'll be back later this week when the Lakers identify Scott Drew. That's what I'm after.
Mark Few, I could actually see.
Okay.
Tommy Lloyd. Let's get them all in there. Why not? Who needs James Borrego? Let's get them all in there. Yeah. Tommy Lloyd's fresh off winning a U18 championship.
We can't get a podcast at a James Borrego. All right?
There's no shot.
No. We need Mick Cronin to interview for the Lakers job. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Terry Teagle, legend. Huck Larnell. Thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. You're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. More of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comments. Yep. So do that, and we will talk to you again real soon. Until then,